and we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here at the Garden Club of Jacksonville, either in person or on Zoom. We're so happy to have you all here. This is the Horticulture Corner program, the first one of the fall. Oh, honeybee. When I saw this picture of Mika, that just came to my mind when I saw that picture. I'm like, oh, honeybee. It just makes me so happy to look at it. This program at the Garden Club is brought to you by me. I'm the executive director of the Garden Club of Jacksonville. And off on the side, off camera right now is Tiffany Davis, who's our Garden Club president, and she's going to be helping facilitate today's program. Thank you, Tiffany. We're so happy to have you here. And this program couldn't happen without the generous funding of the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund, who makes programs like this hybrid programming, possible with a generous grant. I'd also like to thank Wally Eriks, who probably checked you in today. Give us a wave, Wally. He is our horticulture chair, and we're so happy to have him on board. He's a new member of the Board of Trustees. I'd like to just give you a little plug. So if you're here today, maybe you just know about the Garden Club, maybe you're already a member, but if you're not, you can join by going to our website. It's GardenClubJax/membership, and Tiffany has just put that in the chat for those of you on Zoom land. And if you're here, there's a flyer in back, and you can use your camera to take a picture of the QR code and join that way. We'd love to have you. And now it's my very distinct pleasure to introduce Mika. Mika Hardison is an active and knowledgeable beekeeper and the mastermind behind her popular products, including herbal honey infusions, soap, and other offerings. She specializes in urban beekeeping methods and has been actively involved in the profession since 2018. She and her husband, Octavious Carr, co-founded the Herban Bee. As avid gardeners, they focus on integrating beekeeping into urban neighborhoods and exposing disadvantaged communities to agriculture. The couple practices their craft mostly in urban areas due to the limited land resources, a challenge many Black farmers face in the United States. An educator and advocate for bee conservation, Mika attended the University of Florida Bee College and is a member of both the Jacksonville and Nassau County Beekeepers Associations. As a licensed beekeeper with the state of Florida, Mika and her husband complete bee removals and relocate distressed at-risk bees regularly, including at the Garden Club just this year. They gave us a lot of advice. So please welcome Mika. And if you have questions, which I know you will, please keep them for the end, both on Zoom and in person. If you're here in person, we have a microphone off to the side, and we really need you to ask your question at the microphone so that we can record it as part of this program. And if you're on Zoom, please put your question in the chat and we'll pose it to them after the program. All right, with that, I hand it over to Mika. Take it away.
All righty, thank you. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Wally. Thank you, Garden Club members, for the invitation to come and speak today about bees, right? Bees are something that me and my husband got into because we're pretty avid gardeners. And we noticed that in our gardens, oftentimes we weren't getting the pollination rates that we really needed to get. And so about 3 or 4 years ago now, we got into beekeeping. And since that time, we've kind of expanded what we do. Now we also partner with an urban farm. Many of you may, I'm sure everybody is familiar with the Clara White Mission, right? Right, okay, so the Clara White Mission has an urban farm that is in the middle of a food desert on Moncrief. And so we partner with them and volunteer there and keep bees there. And we have some very exciting things coming up there in terms of beekeeping and making sure that people have the opportunity to involve themselves with beekeeping if that is their sole desire. So yeah, I think that's, is that all my plugs?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay, great. So we can get into the program. The 7 habits of highly effective bees. We can go to the next slide. So what bees contribute to our world? We hear about bees all the time. We hear about bees being at risk. but why are they important to us? So we highlighted a few reasons. Bees pollinate more than a third of the world's crops. So that means that 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we put in our mouths are the results of bees and pollination. If bees were not there, half of the fruits and vegetables that you see, every day in your grocery stores wouldn't be there anymore. Also seeds, that's something that we don't really think about. We don't really think about seeds really being the direct result of bees pollinating flowers and things of that nature, but that pollination is what allows those seeds to set. And so if there were not bees, then we would have a lot less seeds than we do. Even crops like kale, the brassica family, things that we don't really think about as requiring pollination in order to give us food on the back end. I'm sure people, maybe if anybody in here grows lettuce or collards, once those leaves mature and we break off those leaves, then we call it going to seed. When the flower comes up out of the middle of the collard or the lettuce or the kale or what have you, and they give us the seeds that are required in order to replant this crop next year. Bees keep the global economy buzzing. Bees are responsible for 15 billion just in US crops, 200 billion worldwide. So not only are they a part of our environment, but they're a very active part of our world economy, not even just the US economy. Bees are the canary in the coal mine. So I'm sure, well, maybe some of us are not. I'm old enough to remember this analogy, but canaries were used as a warning signal in coal mines to let coal miners know that something has gone awry and their lives could potentially be in danger. And so really that's what bees are for us. They're our canary in the coal mine. They give us the opportunity to see when something is not quite right in our environment, right? And so when we see pesticides and things that are impacting bees, it gives us an indication that, maybe pesticide use is getting a little bit out of control, because bees are, they're social animals and they live in a hive. They're kind of unique in the insect world. Usually you won't see an ant here or there or a wasp here or there. You're not really going to really notice if they're declining. But for bees, because they live in hives that are meant to stay for a few years, we notice when they're declining. And so then we can turn our attention to our environment or what exactly is putting them at risk. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Bees, I love this one. Bees are on the front line of the war against food security in developing countries. I'm sure everybody saw, or most people probably saw, Angelina Jolie on the front of Time magazine. Did you guys see that? The photo, the epic photo with her and the bees. That's because the United Nations is sponsoring beekeeping for women in developing countries, not only as a means of increasing their income, but also as a means of increasing food security in that area. So that's really how powerful and important bees are. Just a little bit of how important they are. Next slide. So bee decline, we hear often bees are in trouble. We're seeing decreasing numbers of bees, that almost has become something that we hear on the regular. Sometimes when we hear things over and over and over again, they kind of fall on deaf ears. But as we talked about on the previous slide, bees are really an indication of our overall health and environment, right? If pesticides are killing bees, they're also going to kill people, right? We have that commercial, those commercials for what's that fertilizer? Roundup, right? We see the Roundup commercials. If you've been exposed to Roundup, call this number, right? Because we've linked the use of pesticides with an increase in cancer rates. So again, bees are an important indicator that maybe something is just not right, and we're going to talk about what we can do or how we can help. Colony collapse disorder. Probably starting about 10 years ago, we began to see whole colonies of bees just disappearing. and nobody really had an explanation for that. Over time, scientists kind of narrowed it down to two things. One is a parasite that is probably maybe the second most imminent threat to the bee population, and the second is pesticide use. We have seen a decline in colony collapse disorder, thankfully, but there are two pesticides that really are on the front of the controversy and on the front of maybe the attack on bees, and that is glyphosates and neonicotinoids. I'm sure we've probably all heard of those, right? We named one, Roundup, but we want to be conscious of our gardens, conscious of what we're spraying in our gardens. We use OMRI listed pesticides or herbicides, and they're organic and they're very effective. And even with those, you want to make sure that you're spraying at a time when bees are not foraging, right? So that's early in the morning and late in the evenings to ensure that as they make their journeys and visit from flower to flower to flower, they'll survive. One of the easiest things that we can do to make sure that bees will be here tomorrow and beyond is to plant bee-friendly gardens. So for all you kids, I'm so glad that you came. We have pollinator kits for you where you can plant a little garden and hopefully see some bees visit that. We're excited that you're here. One of the other things that we can do is talk about beekeeping and involve young people. So again, I'm so glad to see your faces. The earlier that we can be concerned about bees and the environment, the better, right? All right. Native plants, planting native plants. That's another thing that we really want to focus on. In Florida, we're actually pretty fortunate because there is such a huge number of native plants that we can, just really plant it because they're native. They don't really require a whole lot of anything, just kind of basic care. So we can designate a small place in our yard. Each of us could do that, right? Yep, you're supposed to shake your head, yep. Each of us could do that in order to create bee space or create space really in our worlds for bees. All righty, okay, next slide. So the name of the presentation was The 7 Effective Habits of Bees. And I named the presentation that because with bees, there are many things that we can learn from them. Right? They actually predate us, and they've been working together and surviving for a very long time. And so we just wanted to highlight 7 things that we can learn potentially from bees that would make us better as people. Okay, so let's talk about those. Teamwork. Here you see bees working together. We call this phenomenal festooning. And it's when bees latch on to each other. There's different thoughts as to why they do it, whether it is to create wax or to help with honey production. But for anybody here that is a beekeeper, once when you pull those frames apart, you see lots of this. And so bees are great at teamwork. Bees actually cannot survive individually outside of the hive, their house. They actually can't survive outside of the hive. And so teamwork is very important to their survival. They bathe each other. In the winter, when it's cold, they gather in a ball to make sure that all of the members of that team or of that family, of that hive, stay warm and survive. So in terms of what can we take away from bees, I think that definitely, probably every one of us would say that we have an opportunity as people, as humans, to be a little bit better at teamwork. I don't know about you, but a lot of people have been skipping me in the lines lately. I'm at the grocery store, I'm here, I'm there, I'm in long lines, and people are just kind of ease on, moving on into the line. That's not teamwork, right? I think that's about it. I just wanted to touch on that bees are constantly in communication. And that is really what also allows them to be very effective as a team. Okay, next slide. Decision-making. So what can we learn from bees in terms of decision-making? This slide really shows us what happens when bees swarm. So just to back up a little bit, bees know when they're going to be out of space soon. And so at that point, they create another queen. The queen takes 16 days to develop. And before that new queen emerges, about half of the hive picks up and moves to another location. In preparation for that, they really do some very interesting things. The queen, usually you can identify her in the hive because she's moving a little bit slower than everybody else. The bees will be scurrying around and she's kind of moving purposely. She kind of moves like a queen, really, honestly, she does. She has the attendants that are attending to her and taking care of her every need because her main purpose is reproduction, right? And so because of that, she's bigger than they are. So when they realize, okay, hey, we've got to move to a new home. This is going to be a little bit overcrowded for us. They slow down in feeding her. She doesn't gather her own food. They gather food for her. So in preparation for this traveling, they slow down in terms of the food that they give her, which slows down her production. In turn, she starts shrinking. She's losing weight. Over time, you'll see the bees, the worker bees, they're getting more aggressive with her, you know, pushing her, prodding her, in some cases biting her. And that's because they're trying to keep her moving. They're getting her ready for this journey. And so they have her on a weight loss program. Keep walking, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. And so they keep her active, 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 active. At the time when it's time to leave, she'll be fit enough in order to make the flight. If they didn't come together as a team to help one member of their team, the most important member, the queen, then it would be impossible for them to move to another location. So back to the decision-making piece. When bees make the decision to swarm, I'm sure everybody here knows or has seen a swarm. A lot of videos that go around on social media and other places of bees just kind of gathered together, sometimes in very odd places, on car windows. I've seen them on side mirrors. What do you call those mirrors? Yeah, not rear view. Side mirrors, trees. When spring comes, it's swarm season and we start getting a lot of calls. We've rescued bees from, it's probably the oddest place we've rescued them. The port, yep. We've made several trips to the port this year. We got a huge swarm from a power plant. So anyway, so when spring comes, we start getting calls. If you have some swarms this year and you walk out in your backyard and there's 10,000 bees and you're freaked out, give us a call and we'll come get them. We'll come get them because we want them to be rehomed, and that's what we do. We rehome them in a place where they can be safe. But back to the decision making. Bees make a decision that, okay, we're going to outgrow this space and we need to leave. This image shows kind of the time progression of how that generally happens. At 10 o'clock, you see two foragers. Those are the most experienced bees in the hive. And each one of them has identified the next home, one on the left and one on the right. They both can't be the place where the bees move. So how they make that decision as you go through the time progression at 1 o'clock or 1300 hours, these bees take the information from the bees that are foraging and have identified, identified these new locations. They take that information and they go visit the locations. And so over time, by the time 4 o'clock hits, all the experienced bees or the foragers have decided on a location. And so they gather everyone, and to see it is just phenomenal. You'll see thousands of bees come out of a hive in a cloud almost. And then they'll go a short distance away and gather into on your back porch or in your we had a boat. Your tree, yeah. They'll gather, and that's where they will be until they move to the new location. So how does that decision making, or what can we as humans learn from that decision making? Well, the first thing I thought about is that as humans, we too, or as people, we too gather information from other individuals in order to make a decision, right? I know when I go to a restaurant, the first thing I do is what? Read reviews, right? We were in Lowe's this week buying appliances, and guess what we were in there doing? Looking at the reviews. Oh, this one has bad reviews. Don't get that. Get this washing machine, not that one. All based on the feedback that we got from others' experience. So likewise, in the hive, all of the bees don't go out foraging to find the new location. It's just a certain number of the bees, or the older bees, the foragers, that go out and complete that, come back, and the decision is made. So back to us as people. We gather information from individuals to make decisions on purchases. Sometimes we make decisions or buy things just because somebody has said, oh, this is going to be great, or this product is awesome, or the quality is just outstanding. And we have no personal knowledge of that product at all. But the feedback from others around us is a strong enough force to make us go out and purchase, right? I do that. I get in trouble sometimes for doing that, right? So that's what we do. Where we differ from bees is that as people, a lot of times, or oftentimes, we take that information from the outside without any information of our own, right? So with bees, if a bee comes back, a bee goes out and identifies a new home, he comes back, she tells the other bees what's going on. They go check it out. They may eliminate, or they do eliminate, this location based on that information that was provided by the bee, but also their own information, their own assessment of how viable this new place is. Back to us as humans. We've heard the term fake news a lot recently, right? We hear that term. It's just a common term now, really. But what that means is that information that was not accurate, right, was circulated, and oftentimes people make decisions based alone on inaccurate information. It's not verified. They're not really relying on their own experience as a person, but solely relying on information from others that may be inaccurate. With bees, there's a confirmation process, right? They're confirming to make sure that the information that they're receiving is accurate. So what can we learn as people from bees? Yep, collective decision-making is great, and it's great to gather information from other sources. We certainly don't have to experience everything. That would be impossible to do in order to decide what restaurant to go to. But when it comes to bigger decisions, you know, I'll leave your imagination to what the bigger decisions are. But when it comes to bigger decisions, in addition to gathering that information, we also want to make sure that we're doing a gut check, right? And that we're maybe gathering information based on our own experiences as well. And then fake news wouldn't be a thing, right? Okay, next slide. Work for the benefit of the collective. I love this. I love this. Bees aren't worried about taking credit. Oh, bees aren't worried about me. Bees work for the collective. They work for the community, right? And while they certainly, as individuals, are interested in staying alive and continuing on with their daily activities, they also are concerned with the collective. So what can we as people take from that? Well, we certainly want to all have happy, successful lives. But maybe even we can use pesticides as an example. It certainly would be our right to go to the store, go to your Lowe's and Home Depot and pick up whatever pesticide you so choose, right? And nobody's there looking over your shoulder as you're reading the labels and applying it, right? You could apply it in the middle of the day. You could apply it in the middle of the day. and nobody's going to stop you. But is that what's best for the collective, right? Are all pesticides great for the environment? Certainly, again, it may be your right to buy and use the pesticides that you so choose, but working for the collective or for the benefit of the collective would mean each of us as individuals making decisions that certainly are good for ourselves, but are good for others as well. And so that really is a big part of how beehives are successful in their food gathering, even in their defense, they work for the collective. Next slide. Share resources. Oh, I like this one too. Bees spend a lot of time foraging and gathering nectar. Everybody knows how hard bees work. Super hardworking creatures. But bees are also very good at sharing. Sharing. Yeah. Do you think maybe we as people, excuse me, could do a better job at sharing? Yeah, we could do a better job at sharing. Is there somebody in the community who maybe could use our help, right? Is there somebody out there who maybe needs some assistance? Are there some organizations that maybe need some volunteers? We as individuals could share our resources. Next slide. Work ethic and personal accountability. Bees don't have a boss, right? There's nobody over them cracking the whip. It's a myth that the queen is some benevolent dictator that is, determining each task being done and what happens. In reality, that's not what's happening at all. She is responsible for reproduction. She really is not involved at all in the daily workings of the hive. It's up to each bee to jump in where help is needed. They don't need someone to stand over them to have them give their all every day. They do that automatically. And because of that, the collective benefits. Oh, I wanted to tell you this. I think this is a pretty neat fact. A lot of times we, see beehives, we may not necessarily, think of them as a family, but in fact, that's what they are. There's a queen, and then there are the workers. And most likely all of those workers are her daughter. They're her daughters. So it doesn't really relate to work ethic and personal accountability, but I just thought it was an interesting fact. But again, what we can learn from bees in terms of work ethic and personal accountability is doing our best, right? Doing the right thing when nobody is looking. That really is what determines character. Next slide. Except that ultimately we live or die as one. That is kind of something that we've covered, but it's so true. The decisions that we make as individuals affect the whole, and there really is no getting around that. So I think I kind of spoke about that at length, so I'll move on. Our ability as a whole transcends our constituents. Just like bees, we accomplish much more when we work together, right? Again, bees cannot survive independently. They need the hive to do the things that they do. As they go through their lives and their glands mature, they move from job to job, task to task. And ultimately, when you see a hive, whether it's a swarm or you see a hive in the tree, or you're fortunate enough to see one in its natural setting in nature, that's the result of thousands. I'm sorry, I meant to say next slide. That's the result of thousands, up to 40,000 individuals that work together to accomplish something great and grand. It takes about a million bees or a million trips, from bees to complete about 1 5-gallon bucket of honey. That's a lot of trips. But if you just looked at the productivity of one bee, it would just be a couple of drops. But together, that's how we're able to glean honey from their hives, is because working together, they're able to accomplish so much. So you have worker bees, you have guard bees, you have mortuary bees. I mean, so many bees with different jobs and different responsibilities. But all of those jobs and responsibilities come together in order to create the hive. So again, our ability as a whole transcends our constituents. And lastly, keep the world flowering and fruitful. Be engaged, be connected, be a part of the change, be a part of the future. As individuals, we can all do our part to ensure the survival of bees. I'm sure everybody is not in a position to, or may not even be interested in being a beekeeper, and that's certainly fine. But again, can we plant a bee garden? All right. Can we reduce our pesticide use? So those small things, if done by each individual, will be able to accomplish something great. All righty. That's my spiel on bees.
I am so inspired. I feel like we all have our little jobs to do for bees and for each other. Like, well, who knew this was going to be such a about the bees themselves. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see Mika, and Octavious, I think, is going to jump in too. And we can start asking questions. So if you're in the audience, you have a question, the microphone right over there. So go ahead and make your way over that way. And, I think there's some coming up in Zoom. We do, because we want to get your question on the recording. And if you say it just, here, then we'll miss it. We hear your beautiful voice.
I know that there may be people who are interested in beekeeping as well. So if you're interested in beekeeping, please feel free to ask those questions as well.
Is this thing on? Yeah, it is.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you for this presentation. It was very informative. I did not know half of the stuff that you shared today, so thank you for that. But you made a comment and you were talking about bees being a family. And
Being what?
Bees being a
Family.
family, like, we don't consider them as a family are. And then you were saying that, just like the queen bee, you can say that those are her daughters. Are they male bees?
Great question. So yes, there are male bees, but 98% of the hive, between 97 and 98% of the hive are female. 3% of the hive, the females are out working. The guard bees, they're female. The gatherer of the foragers, the people that are gathering honey and pollen, they're female.
Octavious, can you move into the camera a little bit so we can see you?
I'm sorry.
There you go.
As Mika said, there are a few male bees, but their only sole purpose is to reproduce with the queen, or they see a queen from another neighboring hive fly off. But with male bees, unfortunately, during the winter, when it gets cold, food gets scarce. Guess what happens to the male bees? They kick them out. So you only find male bees in a hive during the spring and summer. As the food gets scarce, the females will kick all the males out, because the males, as Mika said, don't go out and forage to do anything. So the females say, hey, times are hard, food is scarce, we don't too many miles to feed, you gotta go.
You gotta go. Yeah.
So they will literally push them out of the hive.
Yeah. Even during warm months, they're not even gathering their own food. So because their contribution, as Q said, when resources are scarce, they're out of there. Yes, please.
How are bees created?
Say that again.
How are bees created?
How are they created? Oh, it's a great question. So bees have the unique ability, and I just love this about bees, but bees have the unique ability to basically rear what is needed at the time, right? So the queen goes out on her mating trip, like Octavius talked about. She goes out on her mating trip, and when she comes back, she has enough sperm to reproduce for 2-3 years, right? She's set. She mates one time, she's done. But from that point on, she lays an egg, and the hive can determine what is needed. So usually she doesn't want another queen until she is, not able to do that job anymore. And so she's secreting a hormone that lets all the other bees know that, oh, everything is good with the queen. We're good here. No other queen needed. We're good. But if something happens to her, or she gets old and dies off, that hormone is no longer being emitted. And so the bees will essentially turn one of those eggs into their next queen. And so pretty much that's what happens. The hive takes the larva that is laid by the queen and makes that into either a worker bee or a queen. The exception are male bees. So female bees are fertilized eggs. Male bees are the exception because they're not fertilized. So when she lays that larva, it's unfertilized. And so that's how a male comes to be. Anything to add?
Okay, we have a question on Zoom that we'll go ahead and do. What are the 2 herbicides you should not use, and what organic herbicides can you use? So maybe get very specific so that people can make their list.
Yep. So glyphosates and neonicotinoids are the 2 that you want to stay away from, but you're not going to see that name on products, right? What you're looking for is the term OMRI, OMRI. And you can look up OMRI, you can Google OMRI and find out products that are certified to be organic and will not be harmful for bees. But even with those products, you want to make sure that you're spraying only when necessary and that you're spraying at a time when bees are not out foraging. So that's going to be early in the morning before they come out, and at dusk when they are, all kind of gone back to the hive.
Okay, looks like we have a question over here.
I just want to say thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today. And I have
Certainly.
2 questions for you.
Yes.
If we do happen to have a hive that is swarming and I would like to have relocated, how would the best way to get in touch with you be for that? And also, if you're interested in beekeeping, how would you suggest to get started, and what would the minimum requirements be for what you would need to have?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so I have a short memory. Can you stay to the mic? Tell me, what was the first question again?
The first question was just how would we would be the best way to have a hive relocated?
Okay, so there's a list, and I'll let Octavius tell you about it. But in addition to that, we left our cards in the back on that table, so feel free to grab it and keep it. We're on Instagram under the Herban Bee.
Okay, great.
But if you're not an Instagram user, then you can certainly call us. But we're definitely not the only people who relocate bees in Jacksonville. There's lots of people, and there's actually a list that he was responsible for putting us on. So I'll let him speak to that.
Yeah. So we are a member of the Jax Bee Association. So
Get in the camera there, would you?
Oh, sorry. We are a member of the Jax Bee Association, which is the local Jacksonville Bee Association here for beekeepers. So you can become a member of Jax Bees, and they can, we have a lot of people who help mentor. Also Mika and I are willing to help mentor anyone. I will tell you, getting into beekeeping is sort of expensive. Okay, just gonna be honest with you. Getting the price of bees and the equipment and the setup is just if you're looking to start just one colony, you're probably looking at about a $500 investment.
Oh, that's not as bad as I thought.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
So around there.
What was the price again?
Around probably I would say $350 to $500 for one to get started.
Yeah.
And you basically just need a small space on your property to set it up.
So Florida does have some rules. So it needs to be 15 feet from your neighbor's fence line, and it has to have like a 6-foot place where the bees fly up. They don't want bees flying at eye level, flying into your neighbor, walking around in their backyard. So they want the bees to be able to fly up. So you have to have like a 6-foot fence or 6-foot hedges or something where the bees fly up and where they fly back down into their
Okay,
life.
awesome.
But you have
Because
to
your
register.
neighbor may not be interested in being a beekeeper.
For
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yes, but you do have to register your bees with the state of Florida. So
Okay,
I
good
will
to
let
know.
you know that. I think it's around $15 and it's up to like 20 hives, but you do have to register your bees.
Awesome. Thank you so
And
much.
a water source. That's very important because if you don't give bees a water source, they're going to visit your neighbors. They're going to visit your neighbor's pool. Your neighbors are coming over. Okay.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
I just wanted to add that.
Brenda, could you get a little closer to the microphone? Could you get a little closer to the microphone? And you can just
Like
bend it
that?
down. There you go.
Okay. All us short people. I just wanted to add.
Closer though. I can't hear you.
Closer.
Closer to the microphone. Yeah, just put your face closer to the microphone.
I just wanted to add that in addition to the things that you're doing to protect honeybees, Florida has lots of native bees.
Absolutely.
And the same things that protect the honeybees will protect the native bees. Most of the native bees are solitary bees. They don't live in a hive and they need like hollow stems that you've left in your garden, a bare sandy area for their nest. And they're important also, but protecting honeybees will also protect the native bees.
Certainly.
They like single flowers instead of these real full double flowers. They like the single ones so they can get to the pollen. And then for their nest, instead of a hive, they make individual little nests in sand or stems.
Yes, thank you so much. I meant to mention that. So I thank you so much for bringing that up. We actually have 6 bees in Florida that are on the endangered list. So native bees are very important. And as she said, creating space, they're a little bit different because they're not social, right? So they could live in leaves, they could live in pieces of wood. So the key for native bees is leaving area in your yard that is just untouched, that you just kind of let naturally do what it does. I'm not telling you to, let the grass grow to, not the ceiling because it's outside, but you know what I mean? But untouched areas. I bought this Build Your Own Bee Hotel from Five and Below. Is anybody familiar with that store? 5 and Below. So I bought this bee hotel for native bees that I wanted to show you for $5, and this little $5 investment will potentially create housing for native bees as well. I'm so glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Just want to say thank you for doing this for everybody so we could learn. But 2 questions for people that want to keep bees. Are you guys available to ever check out like certain areas like of properties so that they know that this is a good place for the bees and like, okay, hey, it's meeting Duval guidelines for my neighbor? Do you guys ever do checks like that? Or can people send you photos of the property so you guys can say, hey, yeah, that's fine?
Yeah, we absolutely get calls and messages all the time, and we try to respond to them all. We're certainly available.
Okay.
In addition to being beekeepers, we try to be very active in terms of bee conservation.
Okay.
And so certainly the more people who are willing and able to engage with bees, it may not mean all the time that we are able to come out because we're pretty busy.
Yeah.
However, if you send me a picture,
Okay.
or if you live relatively close, then certainly in some way or another, we will definitely help.
Okay, awesome. And then the second question is, I know that you guys rehome bees. If we have
Repeat
this
that, I
set
didn't
up,
hear that.
I know that you guys rehome bees.
Yes.
So in the correlation to my last question, if we have this set up, will you guys help us get bees to get them started?
Oh, that's a great question. So we rehome bees, but there's another aspect of getting bees naturally. right? Setting up bee traps or swarm traps.
That's not what
So-
she asked. That's what she asked. Would we like sell them a nuke if she didn't
Is that what you're asking?
Like,
Right.
do you guys, like, if we have this set up, can you guys help us get
Right. Can we
bees?
sell them? a
Oh, I
nuke?
thought you just meant getting them naturally.
Yeah, or how can you get them
Oh,
naturally?
okay, well,
either
yeah,
way.
the natural route, that's, yeah, you don't want to do that. If you've invested in a hive,
Uh-huh.
then you certainly just want to go and purchase
Okay.
bees. And Mike sells bees.
Bee, we can give you some information after this of where you can purchase bees.
Okay.
Also, absolutely. I will just meet us afterwards. Talk to me
Step in, Kim.
afterwards. Sorry, and we'll tell you how to get bees. And there's a certain time of year that you need to
Right.
get bees. So
Not now.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely not right now. So get with me, Mika, after this, and I'll go over everything you need to know about how to go about getting bees and when's the best time to get them.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you so
we
much.
also do a beekeeping 101
Oh, I love that.
class over at the Clear White Mission.
Okay.
Not the Clear White Mission, I'm sorry, White Harvest Farms, the farm that supports the Clear White Mission.
Okay.
And it's online and it's coming up. So I'll be posting about that on my page.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys after then.
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Sounds like it's a good time to start planning. if
Yeah, it's
you're doing that,
definitely a
so
good
that's
time to
good.
start planning. It's a great time to start getting your equipment, identifying where you want to put your bees so that when spring comes around, it's go time. It's not time to think about what you want to do and, oh, maybe I'll do this and that, because the bees are only available for a short period of time. So you have a window of opportunity. And once that window of opportunity is gone, it's not that you can't get bees, but their chances of survival will be impacted the later you wait.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I have hummingbirds and all kinds of butterflies and bees in the backyard, and the bees are coming to the hummingbird feeder.
Yes. Yes.
I just use a simple syrup in there. I use a fourth a cup of sugar
Yes.
to a cup of water.
Yep, you're giving them bee food.
Yeah.
The simple syrup is exactly what beekeepers, or a lot of beekeepers.
It's not going to hurt them then.
No, it's
No.
not,
But
definitely
they
not going to
do-
hurt them.
These are the little tiny bird feeders and I have it hanging in the window
Yeah.
and they love it.
Yeah.
And so the hummers won't come to it. But it's not going to hurt the bees. huh?
No,
No.
absolutely not.
Now, it's not gonna hurt the bees. So what is going on right now is we're in what is called the dearth period. So there's not a lot of flowers or blooms for the bees to forage and to get nectar from
So
right
they-
now. So what they're
They're
looking
just
for is,
foraging on my bird.
right, they're looking for any source of food right now. And the sugar source that you're feeding the honeybees is just what the bees want, that you're feeding the hummingbirds, it's just what the bees are looking for. So that's why they're going to that. They're looking for food to eat. So it's not going to hurt the bees. If it was going to harm them, they wouldn't go to it. They know they will stay away from it.
So you're actually practicing bee conservation. We want to thank you.
Yeah, you're helping the bees.
Bee conservation,
Congratulations.
go team.
All right, we have several questions on Zoom that I'm going to try to get through here. One is, how large is a bee community compared to a city? I don't even know how to think about that, but maybe you have some way of.
So Jacksonville has about how many people?
About 1 million people.
About 1 million people. Your large hives will have about 40,000 bees in there, give or take. You would agree with that?
Yep.
Yeah, so maybe a small city, but like, say, for example, at our house, we may have 17 hives. So a lot of small cities.
Wow. Okay, that's great. How long does the queen live?
I'll take that. So the queen can live 2 to 3 years, but most people, and I know this will sound pretty bad,
Definitely.
but you should replace your queen every year. So you want a queen that's really on top of her production game, the reproduction game, and laying eggs. So your beekeepers will only keep a queen once a year, and do what they call pincher. They will get rid of her and replace her with a new queen. But naturally, a queen will live 2 to 3 years. And if a hive is in the wild, the bees will know naturally when it's time to replace that queen. When Mika was speaking earlier, they will say, hey, this queen is not laying like she should. Her production is slowing down. They will rear a new queen, and that new queen will replace the old queen.
So let me
Okay.
just add to that. I never pinch queens, ever.
About to say bad news for feminists.
Yeah, I don't pinch queens. He is correct. You know, beekeepers, especially when your livelihood is based on honey production. I don't, fault anybody for that, but you want a queen that is productive. For me and my practices, I don't pinch queens. It just is something about it. It hurts me to hurt bees. So I don't pinch my queens.
It gets me right here. All right. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll get a couple more on Zoom.
So I was wondering, after you get a hive, how long
Can you move the microphone up so that we could, there you go.
So once you get a hive, about how long after it's established itself, do you glean honey from it? And then is there a certain time of year that, or certain times that you are able to get honey, or it's best to get honey from them?
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely possible for you to collect honey from a hive that you have established in that same year. Of course, as time goes on, that hive will get bigger and bigger and more productive. But in that first year, it is possible for you to get honey from that hive. For an established hive, you can get easily 50, 60 pounds of honey from one hive. But so you may not get 50, 60 pounds from that one hive that first year, but you will get honey. But you have to start right at the beginning of the season. So right when bees are available, you gotta be on it.
When's the beginning of the season?
April.
First week of April. Most beekeepers will start selling bees the first week of April. And we had hives this year that we got in April this year, and we got honey from at the end of July and August. So it's very possible. If you take care of your bees and put them in a good location, it's very possible. We do it every year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Beekeeping also is, just to add on to that while you're walking back to your chair, beekeeping also is not, if your goal is to get honey in addition to, helping bees, of course, then you're not going to be able to be a passive beekeeper. It's going to require weekly inspections, and it requires you to take action when something is threatening that hive. So in order for there to be a yield at the end of the season, I think we just harvested our last honey. We're harvesting our last bit of honey right now for the year. But in order for that to happen, it definitely requires you to be active. So when considering whether or not you want to beekeep, you also want to consider the amount of time that you have available, because it's not something that you can just set. I mean, you can do it. You certainly can do it, but it's not going to be a very productive hive, because there are things that threaten bees, varroa mites, beetles, wax moths. Bees require attention.
Yeah, and just to add on to what Mika was saying, I advise anyone who is looking into beekeeping, please, please, please learn all you can about bees. Please take you some classes, join the beekeeping association. Please don't just go out and get you a beehive. It's not as simple as just putting some bees in your yard. I will tell you, for us, we studied bees probably 2.5, 3 years before we even got into beekeeping. You don't have to study that long, but I will tell you, please study and know what you're getting yourself into before you get a hive. Do your research.
Oh, the other thing that I want to add is that don't have on protective equipment, but they are putting their hands in hives and doing all type of things, and there just doesn't really seem to be the danger that's there. I tried that when I first started beekeeping. I just knew I was going to be the bee whisperer. I knew it. So I went out and just, and I was okay for a while. But then one day, depending on the weather, depending on the mood of the bees, depending on the heat, there's a lot of factors. One day you're going to potentially, or you could potentially have an experience like mine, where we stopped counting at pulling 17 stingers out of me that day. And I got sick, because that much toxin is going to make you sick. So even though you see a lot of videos where experienced beekeepers may not be wearing protective equipment, when you get bees, get you some protective equipment.
Good to know. Okay, I'm going to ask one question here, and then I'll throw it to you. All right, what is the level of threat that killer bees now pose to domestic bees?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's primarily a West Coast threat, not a threat here, or even in
South
Florida.
Florida.
South Florida as well is a threat. In Jacksonville, we haven't seen any killer bees. I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, there are no killer bees north of I-4, the parallel going toward Orlando. They like the hotter weather in Florida. There are no killer bees here, but I mean, it's not to say that there won't ever be any here. But right now, there's no threat of killer bees being in North Florida right now.
I
So-
like that news very much.
So just to add on to that's also why it's important for you to get local bees, because there could be an instance where you buy queens or you buy a package from South Florida or from another place, and you risk getting a queen or bees that could be a threat. So you want to make sure that you get your bees from a local beekeeper, a local source.
Yes.
I have two questions. So my first question is, what is actually a threat to a beehive? And the second question is, when purchasing honey from the grocery store, how can you tell it's actually bee honey?
Okay, so I'll take your first question while I think about your second question. Well, your second question is what's in my mind now, so I'll go to your second question. Where you get your honey matters. There has been a lot of controversy and a lot of government intervention concerning honey, because honey is ultimately a commodity. So there have been several places around the world that are not able to import honey into the US because in fact, it's not honey. So I would recommend getting your honey from a local beekeeper, knowing the source of your honey. Also, pesticide use and pesticides being in honey is a very real thing. So again, I would suggest getting your honey from a local beekeeper.
Okay.
What was your first question? Sorry.
Other than like pesticides, what was a threat to a beehive?
Oh, okay. So there are a lot of threats to a beehive. Wax moths, beetles, varroa mites is the biggest one. Weather. What else?
I think you covered beetles.
Yeah, that's probably what you're most likely to see. There are some diseases, there's some foul brood. There are other things that, probably that are out there, but you're less likely to come in contact with. But parasites and pests and pesticides are the main things that are going to be a threat to your hives. Thank you.
All right, we have one more question on Zoom, and then unless there's another question here, I think we'll wrap it up. What are the things we can do in addition to growing flowers to help bees proliferate and become less endangered? That's a good one to end on, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was a statement. I
Yeah.
didn't think it was a question. Can you read it again? I'm sorry.
What are the things we can do in addition to growing flowers to help bees proliferate and become less endangered?
Yeah, so I think one of the main things that we can do is, like she reminded us, is concern for native bees. So creating a bee space in your homes, whether that is for native bees or for honeybees, creating space that is free of pesticide use, that has a natural habitat for them or somewhere for them to house is probably the biggest thing I would say that we can do.
Fantastic. All right, could we give Mika and Octavius a big hand? And I have a couple of messages that I want to share with you before we break up. So, and then you can go buy some honey, which looks really good back there. I've bought many bottles of their honey. It is delicious. I don't know if they brought it today, so I don't want to make you jealous, but their ginger infusion is pretty awesome. All right, so let me go back to our slides real quick. And once again, if you want to get in touch with Mika Hardison, the Herban Bee is on Instagram at instagram.com/the-Herban-Bee. And they have some cards in the back. And if you're on Zoom, there'll be this recording will be on our website, and we'll put their contact information there. All right, I want to tell you about a couple of things coming up. If you enjoyed tonight's program, and I hope you did, then you need to come back to our other programs, which will also be hybrid programs. You can see them here in person or online on Zoom. So the next one that we're doing is called What's My Plant? And it features master gardener Nancy Traver. And she, one second while I put myself back on here so that. It's like, there we go. Sorry about that. She will be answering questions about how to identify the plants that you have. Because a lot of us have plants, we don't know exactly what they are. We don't know like a lot about how to identify plants. And if you're trying to learn about growing plants, this is a great way to kind of get educated. Also, this is a great introduction because the Garden Club is organizing the horticulture show at the Greater Jacksonville Agricultural Fair. And so it is a great opportunity for you to learn more about that and enter your plants at the horticulture show and take advantage of this really cool activity that the whole city can take part in. So come to that. That is October 5th. So 1 month, and we're usually the first Tuesday of every month. Another program that's coming up, the next horticulture program on November 2nd is Houseplants and Health with Talitha Smith Green. She owns a company called Rooted with Love, and they specialize in houseplants. But a lot of the work she does is about how plants really put you in a better mental space and also a better physical space. So a lot of her work is, in that mind-body connection. So really excited about this because I know that there are a lot of plant moms out there that that probably care about this. And if you haven't been to Rooted with Love, you really need to see her store. It's fantastic. And then following that on December 7th is Dig It with Alan Skinner, who has a company called Soil Life Organics. And they do work with the White Harvest Farms to make better soil health, because it's all about your soil. If your soil is healthy, your plants will be healthy. Stop treating the symptom. Make sure the soil it's coming out of is healthy, and then you will get beautiful things like these carrots that came out of White Harvest Farms here pictured. We have a series of programs for kids called Budding Gardeners. And the first one is in October. It's October 14th. October 9th. That's the second Saturday. And it's called Spiders Aren't Scary. There are lots of friendly spiders out there. And you want to invite them to live in your yard because they take care of a lot of pests for you. So, in addition to better soil health and all these things, you can invite great natural predators like spiders to come and take care of them. So you're going to be learning all about that. And there's lots of fun activities to do at that program. And then Fun with Flowers. Our first one this year is October 14th. It's on color basics, learning the theory behind color blocking in your arrangements. It's a DIY program. So you come, they demonstrate how to make these beautiful arrangements, and then you get all the materials to do it yourself right here in the ballroom, and then get to take it home and put it in a beautiful place or give it as a gift. And this is going to be led by the women who run Daughter's Flower Shop, which is right around the corner on Lomax Street. And then finally, we have our open house. We had to delay it a little bit so we could move it outside. So it will now be on October 21st. It's a big open house to talk about all the things that the Garden Club does. And we'd love to see you there. So please put that on your calendar and register for it. And all of those links are being put in the chat if you're on Zoom. And you can also go to our website, GardenClubJax.org/events. Also wanted to let you know that we do surveys of all of our programs because we really want to get your feedback. It's so important to hear from you. And so if you are on Zoom, you'll get the link in the chat, but everybody will get it in an email afterward. And please fill it out. It takes only a couple of minutes. And it's a great way for you to tell us how we're doing and also to give us ideas for programs in the future. Once again, I want to thank the Jessie Ball DuPont Fund for their generous grants. And I want to thank Tiffany, who's helping me run this program across the way. Wave, Tiffany. Bye. Our president. And thanks once again to the speakers, Mika and Octavius, and to all of you for being here, because as I always say, if we do this program without you, then it's just us talking to ourselves, and that is not very fun. So have a great night, everybody. See you later. Goodbye.